Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Tell me who you are.
My name is Yasmin Ayyad. I am a health and fitness coach online and a retired special education teacher. And I've been married for about 1 year and 3 months.
Okay, that's enough about who you are.
Okay.
So, yeah. Did you know what you wanted in a spouse before you got married?
You know what? There were like certain non-traditional things that I really valued that when I thought about like what I was looking for in a spouse, I wasn't thinking your typical, I want him to have a good job. I want him to have finished, like had a bachelor's degree, although some of those things are important to some people and to an extent they are important.
What was important to you?
The most important thing to me, honestly, was his character, in the sense that I had been through a lot of things in my life, and I felt like my whole childhood and growing up, I was always constantly up against challenges, and so it made my character sort of super ambitious. It made me a fighter, and something that was really important is that I actually made dua about this, that if I had to go through X, Y, and Z, I really hope Allah is putting my future husband through those things, because I think then he'd be able to value where I'm coming from, and then I'd have, I think,
if I want to understand you, you wanted someone that was empathetic, could understand your pain.
Yeah, somebody who was through a struggle and overcame.
Right.
Because I had to do that, and I wanted somebody that knew what it took to do that.
Okay. And how did you meet him?
Well, I was born and raised in Chicago in the United States, and he was born and raised in Nazareth, Palestine, so halfway across the world. And he worked with my aunt at a school here and became family friends with some of my extended family here, and we'd often come on vacation here. And so I was on vacation 1 year when we met.
You met. Okay. And how did you know he was the one? I mean, you're looking for empathy, right? You've gone through the struggle in your life. You've made dua that Allah puts this man and molds him to go through the struggle so he can be empathetic. So there's something that happened that you're like, he's the one.
Yeah. Well, number one, I made lots of dua and prayed about it so much. But I think a lot of girls or women go through this, like if you've met with a lot of suitors or whatnot, sometimes you kind of feel like it's forced, or sometimes it's like really hard to find that common ground. And I think one of the first initial things, just the first initial thing, was that it was so easy to talk to him. And I remember the first phone call, I was like, what am I going to talk to this guy about? You know, there's kind of a language barrier, even though I do speak Arabic, but we were talking on the phone for almost 3 hours, and it was just really easy to talk to him. And because we were long distance, it made me just value more of his mentality and his mind, because it was just speaking from his heart, speaking, and I could see his character a lot more. So just that built over time, and just, subhanAllah, like I think Allah made it just like really easier as we went along and brought those things out in our conversation. I caught myself saying like, wow, I agree with that. Or yeah, you know what? I think this and that about that subject, and found a lot of similarities in our way of thinking. So
I think that you guys have a kind of an unusual circumstance, because number one, even though you're Arab, you're in Chicago and he is in Palestine. So there's like a huge cultural difference how you guys grew up. Even though there's adversity, it's so different on the mindset. And then you've got a long distance relationship happening. So now you're married, and then you guys tied the knot. And how are things now?
Things are good. I think you're always, well, first of all, you're right. There is a huge culture gap, because I'm first generation born in the States. And so I think a lot of first generation kids are balancing that back home culture with that American lifestyle or that lifestyle in the West. So even coming back here, yeah, even though I speak the language, there is that huge cultural gap. And I think it's always like communication is always important in a marriage, and just that understanding. And now I feel like it's 10,000 more times important for us, because the way I talk is different than the way he talks. And maybe I'll say something that he thinks it's offensive, but it's really not. And he'll say something that I think is offensive, but he really didn't mean it. So things are, alhamdulillah, so much better. But that first year is definitely hard. To be honest, for me, it's like they say it's that honeymoon phase. And although there were a lot of great times, I think it takes work. And I think it's always going to take work, no matter how many years you've been married. So it's just good to keep that in mind, because if you are going through like that rough patch, you know that it's worth it. Like working together to solve this issue, it's going to be worth it for the relationship. And so, alhamdulillah, things are much better, but of course, there's always room to make it even better. Absolutely.
Now, Yasmin, if there's someone out there watching you right now, and she's feeling really helpless and she's feeling hopeless, and, she could be in her 20s or 30s, and, it's either a cultural difference or a long distance relationship. And she's just like, I don't know if this is ever going to happen. What would you say to her?
If she thinks that she's never going to get married?
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm a very tell it like it is person. So not to sound harsh, but to be honest, I'd personally rather not be married than be in a relationship where I feel alone or feel like that person doesn't understand me, or feel like hopeless. And that was especially hard for me because I felt really established where I came from, and you're yanking me and putting me now in a new culture, and I kind of have to start from scratch, and I can feel helpless and I can feel hopeless at times. But what I would say to her, number one, obviously, is to have patience, but also, honestly, I would say don't put too much focus on it. Like, do you follow the things you're passionate about, do the things you like to do, sign up for this course, take on this new hobby, because honestly, that's what I did. When I got married, I was like 26 years old. So, I mean, to some people that's really old. To me, I didn't think that way, but at the same time, those thoughts started to creep in, like, okay, I'm 26, I'm 26 and a half. And so honestly, that whole time from my early 20s to the time I got married, I just focused on making myself the best person that I can be, worked on my character, my professional development, my personal development. And that's all you really, I think that's important, because then when you do meet that spouse, you're at the level you want to be at, and you can meet somebody that's at your level.
Yeah.
So I think just work on yourself and just work on being the best person that you can.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think that's absolutely great advice. Well, thank you so much for this time.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I'm going to stop the recording now. And I don't know if I stop the recording, this whole thing is going to shut down. So let's see if I stop.